Welcome back to Newsmakers. Our guests, Daryl Hall, Councillor Helen Broughton and Bill Demeter. Now, Bill, as you mentioned, It's Our City have endorsed Jim Anderton for the mayoralty. How do you know there is not going to be someone better waiting in the wings who is going to announce their intentions?
Good question. We think we have a pretty good handle on the remainder that will run, and I think you'll see at least 2 more, possibly 3. We talked to Jim at length. We told him where we came from. We told him what we were looking for, and we said that there were some commitments that any person that ran, mayor or otherwise, would have to adhere to before we could endorse them. He answered some very difficult questions quite nicely, and I must say I went into talking with Jim with a bit of healthy skepticism. And I must say he answered the questions, especially about some hard-to-answer local issues, extremely well. Our board felt the same way, and we have endorsed him. And one of the things we can do for Jim that we think will be very helpful is we have a fair band of what we call feet-on-the-street volunteers.
Can I just throw a question at you about Jim Anderton, Helen?
Yes.
Bob Parker has said, well, in a roundabout way, Jim Anderton is the past. Is that a fair cop?
If you're asking my particular view, the answer's no.
Do you think...
So he's definitely an older candidate than most people expect, in fact, New Zealand, because in Japan they have older candidates all the time. So it's certainly outside the what people expect.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can say Jim Anderton represents the past. He's certainly been a very effective Member of Parliament for Wigram. I've had contact with him through constituents, and he's been very effective at handling local issues.
The fact that we have Liz Gordon in the mayoralty race would suggest that, you know, amongst the centre-left there is a lot of infighting. Is this actually going to perhaps potentially be quite embarrassing when it comes to the election campaign, with Jim and Liz going hammer and tongs?
Well, there isn't a lot of infighting in the centre-left at all.
Well, they loathe each other.
Well, I don't know. I haven't spoken to Liz about it. Perhaps I'm too young for those sort of discussions, but...
Good answer.
Well, I just don't know. And there are going to be other candidates, no doubt, that I don't know are from the centre-left. And that's just the nature of politics. People will want to stand, and good on them. OK. We'll
focus on issues ahead of us in the campaign season. Rates. Rates restraint would appear to be a strength of a lot of the councillors at the moment, and the mayor, when it comes to keeping rates in check under 4% for average rates rises.
I disagree.
Why?
I disagree, okay. Because essentially what they're doing is they're loading debt on the council-owned organisations and taking the dividends into the city. They're finding ways to spend on pet projects like the Henderson deal out of a so-called budget surplus. And the ludicrous decision to have 1,000 anti-cruising signs yesterday is going to be taken out of unspent capital works. I would rather that we decided how much money we've got out of unspent capital works and went through our priorities rather than come up with new ones that aren't going to work. The police said that anti-cruising law is not going to work because it's about the drivers. The drivers will just shift around in the car and keep cruising around. It's a ludicrous decision. But the key point is you're taking $340,000 that should be used for something better. So I don't agree there's been the rates restraint because they're just borrowing from the future. OK, so why don't you think rates restraint is going to be a winning card for some of the incumbents? Well,
for several reasons. Number one, I'm more concerned what the voter thinks as opposed to what incumbent councillors or the mayor think. Number two, we spent an incredible amount of money getting professional survey work done for us, and rates restraint is not in the top 5. People do not mind their money being spent. What they very, very much resent is not knowing where it goes. And having some of these deals done already without any public consultation. I mean, to borrow money to do this art center without, and that was headed to get completely done without public scrutiny. That's the issue. It's not the rates. It's how they're spent and how they're determined to be spent. I agree with Daryl. You've got to know where this money comes from.
Okay. Do you want to comment on that, Helen?
Yes. Well, first of all, I'll say on the issue of the police and the anti-cruising bylaw, the police actually asked us to bring in this bylaw. So I don't think we've done anything wrong in this. The police asked us for this.
That's why it's not going to work in the paper that you saw yesterday.
The police,
it's not going to work.
Can I continue?
Sorry.
The police asked us for this. We've brought in as strong a bylaw as we can. The weaknesses that central government, in terms of what they allowed, were reasonably weak. So we've done what we can, and we need to put up the signs because central government requires we put up signs. We've lobbied central government to take away this ridiculous requirement, but it hasn't been changed. So I see it actually as a central government problem, and we've done what we can. Now back to rates. This was always my issue in the last term of council. I voted against each annual plan because A, the rates were at 10% per year, and that's the previous Labour mayor, if I can say, who was putting rates at that level. The second thing that the previous council did, they never benchmarked. So they said, what do we want to do? And then they put the rates at a high level to do what they wanted. I'm a great fan of getting rates, or starting off with what is our benchmark, and this year we set a benchmark of 4%, and we worked the budget around that benchmark, and it's the first time since I've been on council that that's been done.
Okay.
So I think those two things are positive.
Can I pick up on Bill's concerns about process in the next part of the show? Just to come back to Daryl's point about more borrowing. It's not like, you know, the City Council has drastically cut expenditure to get rates under control. We are loading a lot of debt onto future generations.
Yes.
Should we be concerned by that?
I think the issue is how much debt. Certainly there was a Shand report from central government in 2007, and it was done across the country, and it said that councils were not using enough debt to create intergenerational equity. So what councils were doing is funding everything from their current ratepayers. And if you look at the ocean outfall, that's an excellent example of where the burden for that is going to be used by people for the next 50 years. And so the costing of that should be spread across 50 years.
Okay.
But the point is, that's fine, and the debt levels aren't outrageous, but the trajectory is bad. But the point is, you can't claim that you're a magnificent rates-cutting council when essentially all you're doing is loading debt onto your own organisation. Yes, it might be prudent in the short term, but effectively all you're doing is again, borrowing your children's future.
But won't Bob Parker turn around if he was here right now and say, but look, Daryl, we've got a AA+ credit rating. We're not exactly drowning in debt.
Yeah, and I agree. Actually, I'd agree with him on that one point. But what I'm saying is, it's not through any magical job that he's done in terms of restricting spending or finding a clever way to improve a service without improving costs. All it is saying, actually, we can stand some more debt, which is true, and that's fine, but let's not make a great virtue out of it.
Well,
all right.
No. Look,
very quickly, yes, I've got to go to the break, very quickly.
We have done a range of other things to bring down the rates to, in fact, 3.9%.
Give me one example.
We've looked at depreciation schedules, and we've changed the way that we're doing that. And we have two options with that, and we've taken, in fact, a different option. I argued last time at council under the previous mayor, I said, let's look at this, and we weren't even allowed to look at it.
All right, okay. I am going to have to go to a break. We'll come back and we'll let Bill lead off, because he's been waiting very patiently. Back shortly.